Okay, ladies and gents, today the agenda is very clear for anyone who knows. We're going to be doing a tier list. Today is going to be of the first 3 games in the Ace Attorney series, most notably the first 3 games called the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Trilogy. Today we're going to go through each. We have 5 different tiers so that we can choose some. We got best, great, good, okay, and bad. Now, we will sometimes probably go back and look at some of the things some of the details of each case, but I remember each of them pretty well for the most part, as long as I can remember what their names are, or at the very least who was involved. I have a pretty good idea. It hasn't been that long since we played, you know? So without further ado, ladies and gents, let's go ahead and dive into it. So starting with case 1-1. So this is the starting case of the whole entire trilogy to get you acclimated to the game. We have our perpetrator, Sawit, versus Larry Butts, you know what I mean? Now, if I remember correctly, Larry Butts was crafting a clock for his girlfriend or somebody who broke up with him or something like that, and Mr. Sawit ended up killing somebody with it and then tried to blame it on Larry. Now, I won't lie, this case in the grand scheme of things, it's okay. You know what I mean? It's the tutorial. I'll be a little easier on it because of that reason. Because of that specifically, I will probably put it more so in the okay. You know what I mean? I just feel like it was not bad. It was a good intro, but it's okay. You know what I mean? It's an okay case. I wouldn't say it's like good. Like you were there for less than an hour, maybe, trying to figure out the game and stuff, and it definitely counts. So that's where we're gonna put that. And I feel like okay is quite fitting for that. All right, so that's 1-1. So now we have 1-2. Now this one is actually decent. I will say it's a bit heavier hitting than 1-1. Okay, it's got story involved with it. Previously we were kind of like in the tutorial kind of vibe. Now we're more so on the getting to the story part of it. What are you ranking based off of? So firstly, I'm ranking off of whether or not like everything it flows, right? Like there isn't like annoying turn, like going backwards and forwards with information during like court trials. Not just that, but I'm going off of characters that we're introduced to. So like if there's just like if the writing of the characters is just really bad, I just don't like it. We'll go off of that, and then we're also going off of things like maybe impact, though I will say impact may not play as big of a role because that kind of makes some classes or some cases outclass others way too easily. Like Turnabout Goodbyes or whatever it was called, the one with Mia's backstory along with Godot's, like that one would outclass all of them for that reason. So we got to be careful with that, but I'm thinking we're probably going to primarily go off of gameplay, what it feels like. Does it feel good to go through it? And if I'm recalling, like it's hard to rank the tutorials too, and I said this when we were doing the actual games. It's because it's like when we actually were gonna get around to doing this, I was dreading doing the tutorials because I'm like, it feels like it's not fair, but they're all cases in and of themselves, so like, you gotta judge them the same as everything else. But yeah, those are the things I'm kind of judging off of, and I might try to be a little bit more flexible around some of the cases and try to be a little bit more understanding of what like Capcom was trying to achieve with it, what the writer was trying to achieve. But ultimately, if it's just not good, or if it's bad, or if it's the best, then it's just how it is. But yeah, and then going off of case number 1, case number 1-2, 1 as in game 1, 2 as in case 2. So we're getting more into like the story aspect of it, right? So we're diving deeper into the whole, okay, Mia was my mentor, she ends up getting killed, and then we now have to defend her sister who is suspected of it because Mr. Red White was trying to, I don't remember if he was trying to keep information from being found out about him. Doesn't really matter too much. The story there is not too complicated. It really just comes down to he was doing evil stuff. I think Mia was trying to uncover it, trying to defend somebody, and he was just trying to get the upper hand on her. And so the characters in this one, I honestly don't care about the perpetrators. I think they're as shallow as a kiddie pool. It upsets me to this day that Red White was the one to kill Mia, and the fact that it happened in case 2. That's just a personal opinion of mine. I don't like, every time I think about it, it just feels so like, dang, like she got killed off by what felt like a side character. Like he is like who I felt like would be like a throwaway character, but I mean, it's life. So anyways, I'm getting into too much of the story aspect of it. So if I'm remembering correctly, this is the first trial where we actually maybe had to do either multiple days of investigation, or we actually had to do a proper investigation. I think it was just proper investigation, maybe. With that being said, I do remember it being a really cool case of uncovering the different layers behind things, because at first we're thinking, okay, it's April May, we're investigating her, she's housed up in the other hotel, or in the hotel across the street, she's able to see everything. We're like, of course it's her. I think that was my first impression too, going back and like investigating. And then as you go on, you're kind of figuring out more stuff, and then you talk to Mia's mentor, Grossberg, I think. At some point, he talks about maybe red, white, or I think I'm remembering that correctly. And so then you're just getting into the weeds of it a bit more, figuring out how to do this investigation thing, connecting the dots. And ultimately, I think, like, my personal opinion is that I feel like I wish that these characters were a little bit more interesting, like the red, white, and April May. But I mean, how much more can you ask for villains who are just stupid and are meant to be, you know, outed as criminals? So I gotta really give it to them. They did a good job of making it not feel like Mia's death was a throwaway. It does serve a purpose, and it does set the foundation for how Phoenix interacts with not just his clients, but with other prosecutors and other people who are being questioned and things like that. So for that reason alone, I will put it in good. I won't put it in great, just because it wasn't like, you know what I mean? It introduced Maya, so that's another reason why it's good. And it also, like I said, it set the tone for everything else. So I mean, I think I just gotta put it in good. Now, this one might be a little controversial. Nah, okay, so if I have to be honest with myself, in retrospect, Red White could have been like a final case kind of villain. Yeah, like if they had played him up a little bit more, that's I think what I'm trying to get at. Is like, and I don't think that he was like a horribly written character or anything. Like I said, like criminals are meant to be, or these criminals in this game are meant to be kind of like somewhat, they have to be not uninteresting. They have to be annoying to some degree, usually, in some way. Especially in his case, because he was trying to cover up his own crime, and he was also just full of himself. So for those reasons, I'm like, his character is kind of, like, his character makes sense. It's sound for him to be that way. April May also was kind of that way too. I didn't really care too much about April May. That was the first time I think we saw like a weird crash out where we're like, oh, where she was like that, but I think it just sits properly and good. Nothing was really bad about it. It was just like, dang, Mia died, and this is how the series is gonna be from now on, without our mentor, but with a new sidekick. But yeah, and then thinking about 1-3, so this is, like I said, this one might be controversial, but I feel like this is the Turnabout Samurai case. And now I've said this many times throughout my gameplays if y'all have watched this. Turnabout Samurai is such a goofy case, but it starts introducing layers to how these cases can go, because I think this is the first case we might have had multiple days of investigation, or maybe where it's like there's multiple areas that you need to go back and explore for investigation. Actually, I think the last case did that, because we did have to go to Grossberg's office, and then we went to Red White's headquarters, or wherever, his office. So that was kind of like opening the floodgates, but this is where it really takes that idea of like, we really got to do a lot more digging for these things. And there's so many more characters too. We have the director, we have the kid. I think that's what I also like about this case too, is that the different layers that it introduces for how you talk to certain people and get information, and how the pieces fall into place. Because the kid had his own motive for being around. You had the I forget what her name was, but the girl with the glasses and the camera shows of the film crew, she was around. You had to question her, and then you also had to question the director, and then you had a motive coming from the lady, I think she was the producer of Steel Samurai. And I don't know, it was goofy, and it definitely did draw itself out a little bit longer than I would have liked, but to me, I feel like it was one of my favorite cases of game one. It probably ranks like 2 or 3 of game one, but I mean, I think personally it's like, it's up there. And then I think another thing that I personally really like about it is that it's just, I mean, I don't know, it just has that really goofy vibe where it's like, we just witnessed our mentor dying, or had to defend a client, being our mentor's sister, from being convicted guilty of her sister being killed, or of killing her sister. And I think that was just, you know, a nice little breather from that. So in that case, I think I can put it up here with great, for my own personal opinion, right? I just love the goofy wackiness of it, and I love where they take it. Also introduces one of my loathsome returning main cast characters, or side cast characters, Old Bag. So yeah, I think that's where we kind of put that. All right, now we have Turnabout. I think this is Turnabout. This isn't Goodbyes. What is this? I know this is the DL6 incident, tying in with Edgeworth's past and everything like that. And for that reason alone, before I even talk about it, it goes up here in the best. Honestly, ooh, I'm not gonna lie. Hold on. So I'll put it in best right here. Yeah, I'll leave it in best. So yeah, okay. So let's Turnabout Goodbyes. So in Turnabout Goodbyes, right, we get a deep dive into Edgeworth's past, right? The prosecutor that we have constantly been butting heads with and constantly have been going back and forth with him on, and then we've kind of been getting, I think, little hints of a backstory here and there up until this point, and then finally we get into it. So I think what really ties this one up is that it takes, again, that concept of, okay, we are gonna have multiple layers to it, where we have a case that has been dug up from the past, because keep in mind, this was also mentioned back in case 1-2, the DL6 incident. Grossberg mentions it about how a spirit medium, or maybe something like that, you know, had gotten an innocent man convicted or something like that, or they weren't able to get the guilty verdict. Basically, it was a failure, and it kind of ties back to the Faye storyline a bit. And then, you know, Edgeworth's dad, I think, was the one who was actually on that case, if I am correct. And even if I'm not correct, I mean, the fact that that case, the DL6 incident, ties into that, and then you have the layer of the whole Von Karma situation where he's kind of manipulating Edgeworth, and you get to see why Edgeworth is the way that he is, it automatically brings itself to a best in that category for that reason. I'm trying to think of anything else that I might be forgetting there, but I think that really ties them up. I think you get the really cool, also it was really cool putting the piece together. You also have Lot of Heart, which is like, how could you not like Lot of Heart being in that? But one of the things I love about it was that there was the whole, I think there was like a whole bullet, there was like a bullet thing, because hold on, I'm trying to think of how it actually happened. So I think Edgeworth was on the lake with somebody else. I think Von Karma was the one that shot, or Edgeworth was one that shot and then got convicted of the murder because Von Karma dumped the body in the lake, or it was rigged or something like that. And there were so many pieces to it that you had to put together properly. The whole Nessie thing, the lake monster, you had to look at Lotta's photos. You had to be like, okay, this is how this happened. And then not just that, but you also had to go back, and then the reveal that Von Karma had the bullet in his shoulder the whole time from the whole like incident happening in the past. Like, oh my goodness, it just really ties them up. It ties it all together. Personally, that's how I feel. And I think the more and more that I think about it, it definitely deserves like that top best category, which leads me to the next case. So this is a case that actually wasn't available in the base game, to my knowledge. I think this was an add-on for the remastering of the games. Or when it came to DS or something like that. And I think personally it is one of my favorites of all time. It goes behind Edgeworth. I talked about this a bit on stream before. The reason for that being is because I feel like I love the characters. I love the Sky Sisters. And I feel like they have a lot of potential, right? Like if they were to have continued in game 2 and 3, they would have the potential, but not just that. We also got I was about to say Emperor Gant, Chief Gant, who is the chief of police, and you get to kind of see how he manipulates things a bit. I'm not gonna say I was like the best, that was like the best, you know, criminal ever out of all these. I think Von Karma might have been the best villain so far in this game, and probably will just have it and we'll take it. Gant is a close second, followed by I forget who the villain was in the second. I think that was the lady, right? I think it was the producer lady who was the villain in that one. So she kind of gets that one. Honestly, Red, White, and her might be tied because they weren't like the greatest villains ever, but it is what it is. But anyways, back to the 1-5. Yeah, the whole so it's kind of unfair because they go back and they obviously put all these new things into the game because of how they develop some of the later titles. But when you go back and play it, like right now, you can tell that it feels like a case that could easily slot itself in like an investigations game case, like because currently we're playing through Miles Edgeworth Investigations, and it's like it has the whole interact with the objects thing. The investigations get a bit juicier. You also get to see the backstory, and I honestly think that it was really cool incorporating the whole serial killer storyline. Seriously, if Von Karma wasn't such a compelling villain and had such an effect on one of my favorite characters of the first game, I think that this one might have beaten 1-4, but just I think it's unfortunately it just has to go behind it because of the fact that like because of that fact. So yeah, 1-5 definitely seats itself up there, second best, with just having all the cool characters in it, really cool investigation layers to it, and it just feels like it feels like one of the best, like I don't know, it feels like one of the best ways you could do a case in that first game. Just trying to find the best words for that, but yeah. All right, so that's the first game done. I'm pretty confident about this so far. I think we're off to a strong start. Now, start off with 2-1. Now, 2-1. I have also talked about this one on stream, and in my opinion, it wasn't it. So I will give them this. 2-1 had a very neat idea of giving the main character amnesia. I thought that was probably the most clever part about it. I thought it was fun. But other than that, it introduces Maggie Bird which is also a good point. I actually like Maggie quite a bit. I think she's a funny character. Her bad luck gives me a smile on my face. Not to sound like a jerk, but you know what I mean. It's just funny when she goes on and on about why her life has just been a downward spiral. I truthfully think that 2-1, it was an intro, and that's why I say it does not feel fair to rank these tutorials, and I hate to do it, but it just wasn't that compelling. It was over super quick. I just feel like it wasn't like one of those things where it's like, this is one of the greats. It's worse than 1-1. So, but yeah, what's funny is looking back on these. I'll talk about it later, but all right, let's dive into 2-2. So 2-2, right? So this one is the start of the Fae. Not the start, but where the Fae bloodline or the Fae bloodline storyline kind of widens a bit. And so for that reason, I think it has to go up there with great. So 2-2 is great for multiple reasons. So I had my own personal issue with it only because I kept getting tripped up over small details. But other than that, I think what it does is great. It introduces Pearl as a character. So Pearl is Maya's cousin, and by extension, Mia's cousin. And with that, you get the whole kind of like vibe. You go into Karain Village, you're learning more about what their school or what their teachings are like, what their lifestyle is like, and not just that, but you get a better insight on the kind of life Mia lived. And I think they even touched on why she left, or maybe even they just touch on things like how the hierarchy works. So the main family has like the successor being the successor to be the master of the Karain channeling technique, and that plays a huge part in part 3. And so for that reason, it goes in great. I like the characters. I like the setup and motivations from Pearl's mom, or Maya and Mia's aunt, and not just that, but it kind of like, it was kind of cool seeing the actual channeling happen and actually be used to commit a murder, and have someone try to like plug it up. Not just that, but I do actually think that the Eeny Meeny and Miney and Minnie, I forget what their names are, but I think they were twins. That whole like backstory for them, and how I think it was the twin ended up trying to replace herself to actually be one of the other ones, was crazy. I don't remember the exact detail, but I do remember that plot twist, and I do remember freaking out about that, and I thought that was really sick. Okay, and then next up, we got 2-3. So 2-3, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was like the Steel Samurai, but it was like Mecha Samurai or something like that. So 2-3 is the return of one of my favorite cases, kinda, in a way. It's just like a spiritual successor. I'll put it in good because it was all right. I feel like for the most part, it did its job to be a breather from the crazy. Wait, 2-3 was Big Top? Wait, so 2-4, what? Okay, you're right. That's my fault. Restart, huge stinker, actually. 2-3 is one of my least favorite cases of all time. And I've talked about this many times. At first, I thought it was gonna be like a cool little breath from breath away from like the whole Fae stuff, just like in the first game we had the Fae stuff. It got a little bit deep, and then we kind of went into the the more lighthearted stuff. I thought maybe it would be like that. No. So my number one complaint obviously is with the whole minor thing. I know the community, I've seen a couple people talk about it, and I actually did try to look past it a bit, only because of the fact that I do know that the laws are supposedly different, and not just that, but it's a video game and no one's actually hurt. Doesn't make it right, but personally, I tried to look past it because apparently it's also, I think the writer or the creators, this is the creator's favorite case. I think I looked it up and I saw that. After finishing up, I tried giving it a chance and looking back and being like, all right, maybe I can kind of like get past it, but I really can't. I was going back and I was actually looking and seeing apparently 2-3 was Takumi's favorite case, or just a case he really likes. Yeah, and that's why I was like trying to give it a chance, because I was like, I really wish that when we kind of, I don't know, I wish that when I was playing it, there's nothing I could have wished. I mean, like, I think everything happened the way it was supposed to. Like, the way he wrote it was ridiculous. I think he did a ridiculous job of writing that weird instance where suddenly the cloak jumps on top of the cape or whatever. And not just that, but it's like all of the characters lusting over this, like, I don't even remember how old she was. I think she was like 13, 12. I don't know. And I tried, like I said, I tried to look past it and just be like, it's just a video game. Like, you know what I mean? It's not that big of a deal. Their laws are different. I'm gonna try to like enjoy it how it is. And I was able to kind of get past it a little bit. Like I had my judgment for that reason, but I was able to kind of just keep playing it. Also because I did mess with Mo. You have to understand, Mo the Clown was saving that for me at some point. At first, I didn't like him, and then just doing his voice was fun, and then finding out that he was the only responsible adult out of that literal circus act of a cast, that kind of saved it for me. So it was fun doing the voices, you know what I mean, as Max, and then doing the Mo the Clown voice was really fun. Other than that, though, that was really hard. That was really hard to enjoy. Does the fact he was drunk writing like all of JFA explain anything? Yeah. I mean, okay, so 2-2 doesn't feel like that, but 2-3 feels like that, and part of 2-4, nah, he cooked with 2-4, I can't lie. It is a shame that 2-2 and 2-4 have to sit up with the likes of 2-3, I'm not gonna lie. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, 2 and 2-4. Two of some of the better cases in the game. But yeah, I mean, I think I can forgive 2-3 for the whole cast thing. Like, it's a freak show, and like these people, they don't, you know what I mean, they don't live like particularly very normal lives. They literally just ride around, and their job is to be in a circus act, and so they just don't have a grip on reality, including Regina, which is unfortunate for her, but hey, I mean, you know what I mean. But yeah, outside of that, yeah, it just has to go in 2-3 for that reason. I'm sorry, and the funny thing is, like I said, I don't give it a thumbs down because of the whole cast thing and like how everyone was going after Regina. I give it a thumbs down because of the reveal of how perfectly everything had to line up for the one witness who saw Max to have actually not seen Max. It genuinely made me upset. So for that reason, it goes in 2-3. That was crazy. The reveal was wild. But anywho, so yeah, so I think that's kind of where we go with that. But yeah, and then 2-4. So 2-4 was it falls into good. So this is where I was actually gonna put 2-3 until I realized which cases were which. So 2-4 is the part 2, the spiritual successor to Steel Samurai, in which we are exposed to like the Mecha Samurai or something like that, and then the Evil Magistrate or something like that. I can't remember, but basically it's 2 actors again. One of them is the good guy in the show. One of them is supposed to be the guy fighting him off. And I will say that I don't know. It's good because I think what they did was they expounded on the fact that not every, because like this plays into part of like Phoenix's identity too, because in the first game we learn, okay, this is how I should interact with clients, this is how I should learn how to think outside the box. And this game was kind of like developing the whole sense of like justice and like what does it mean to be a lawyer, what does it mean to get a not guilty verdict, a guilty verdict. And 2-4 introduces that concept and kind of expounds on it in a really neat way. So 2-4 has the protagonist, right, of the show we're actually supposed to be defending, because Adrian's mentor died in the past. Turns out he was actually, I think, doing some funny business with her, and then Adrian was trying to kind of get revenge, and you know, unfortunately the other guy who was the bad guy, the bad actor, was the one who died, and I believe Adrian was the one who was our client was the one who was blamed for it. Matt on guard was the one who was blamed for it. And so our job was to defend him, and we're thinking he's innocent the whole time. Turns out he's not. And so we don't learn that until a little bit later on, when finally the P's kind of line up, and then it's kind of a whole race to also save Maya, because obviously Matt on guard really wanted that not guilty verdict, so he employed the help of the killer to kidnap her, which I thought was a really neat concept of having like a race against the clock to try to make sure that we get him that innocent verdict, but also thinking to ourselves, how can we do that when we know he's guilty, just to save someone's life? We can't just let this guy walk free. And so Phoenix had to learn what it meant to kind of employ justice, and to kind of into not feel like he had to always get that not guilty verdict. If I'm remembering correctly, that last part might be a little bit iffy, but that's what I got from it. Nickel Samurai and the Jammin' Ninja. That's what it was. They gave the Jammin' Ninja such a lame name, but you know what? It is what it is. But yeah, so with that all being said, I think it fits in the upper category of good. It's certainly not my favorite case. It's certainly not a great case. It fits itself quite nicely where it's at right there. All right, so now we dive into the third game. So game number 3. This is rivaling game number 1, right? I think game number 3 does a lot of things like almost perfectly, but game number 3 does a lot of things perfectly. And I feel like one of those things is really going back and just tying up a lot of the loose ends that were kind of left open from the previous games. And that had to be the plan from the beginning, because I know a lot of these cases, or not a lot, but a couple of these cases from this game and from other games too, were actually supposed to be planned for from the previous game, or for the previous game, or they're planned for the next game, but they brought, so they kind of move around a little bit. So this definitely was planned as at least part of a duology or a trilogy. But with that being said, so 3-1, right? We get the back. For one thing, it's a great case off rip. I think it seats itself right here. Actually, I don't know. I think it might seat itself. Oh, this is tough. Okay, so here's why. Okay, so I'm gonna tell y'all why it's starting to get tough trying to rank these right now. So it's starting to get tough because a lot of these cases play into each other. Like, if we're being honest, 3-1, 3-4, and 3-5 could technically be one case. Like, not technically be, but they all flow into each other perfectly. And so for that reason, it's really hard to rank these. 3-1, we get the start of Phoenix's backstory. We get told that he actually had a girlfriend named Dahlia Hawthorne, who actually was the one who committed a crime. And I believe, actually, yeah, Phoenix was actually Mia's client. So Phoenix was the one convicted of the murder, or not convicted, but was the one accused of the murder. And so Mia had to try to prove his innocence, and in doing so, ended up running into Dahlia Hawthorne. That sets the whole tone for everything going forward, right? With the whole Mia and Dahlia thing. Sets the tone. Notice how I said set the tone, but I didn't say starts it, because technically this isn't started. This is actually kind of like the end of the whole Dahlia and Mia interaction that we see. There's a whole other part of it. And so I think with that being said, it kind of exposes a little bit of the backstory. It's a tutorial, but it's one of the better tutorials. So I think we could probably stick it at the tail end of either tail end or right here. I think we stick it at the tail end of great. I think I'm comfortable with that. I think I'm comfortable with that because it kickstarts it, and it kind of shows you what Phoenix was like before being a lawyer. It opens up that new storyline, and it's a tutorial case. So I think being able to pull off it being a tutorial while also being impactful to the overall story makes it a great case. Probably tail end because it's a tutorial, so we gotta chill a little bit, but it's good. All right, and then let's see here. So 3-2, we get introduced to Godot. So Godot, my initial impressions of Godot was that he was an ore farmer. Didn't like him too much. I would say nothing against him, but I had everything against him at first. Bro was doing too much, but then he kind of grew on me, and y'all know why as we, as you kind of play through the game. But so if I'm not mistaken, 3-2 had to do with the Master Mask case. Yeah. It was Master Mask. I'm trying to remember what my vibe was. We did end up taking a little bit of a break playing through this portion of the game, so I did get frustrated by a lot of things. But in retrospect, it does have one of the most cunning villains, I think, out of the bunch. He's like a step below Von Karma on the scale. If I'm being real, he's like a step below Von Karma, maybe a step below Pearl's mom, step below that, but still very compelling. But not much can be really said after that. Like I said, I took a break, so unfortunately don't remember lots of it. There was a part I got really frustrated at though, where I had to so I clicked on an item, and this is just a nitpick, I'm just bringing it up because it's kind of funny, but I clicked on an item, and I remember having to leave, and then I needed to leave and come back or talk to somebody or do something, and then it let me get an additional line of dialogue when re-clicking on the item to actually be able to collect it. And that was one of the things where I was like, okay. I mean, aside from that, the technical part of it aside, compelling villain. We did get to see the return of Adrian. We got to see the Fae stuff kind of be put on literal display in a museum. We did go back and forth a bit on it, so I think I'm gonna put it with good. I think it was good. It's not one of my favorites, if I'm being personally honest with myself. I think it's good. I think it fits nicely and good. To be fair, it did prompt you to reinvestigate after that, but it was the first time it happened, so I understand why you didn't. Yeah, I mean, there's instances I think where it might have happened in the first game too. And the thing is, like with games because there's like little checkpoints that you have to hit before you can actually move on to something. And that's just an old game thing too. Like I'm not saying that like the mechanics are bad or like the game was bad. I felt bad in that instance because I wanted to just move on with the investigation, but it wouldn't let me. But that's just a thing with like older games, that sometimes you get gated from being able to like progress, because especially with like 2D games, because it's like you gotta like go through certain scenarios first. And it just is what it is. It just comes with the territory. But with that being said, yeah, I think it fits nicely in good. It was good. I like the villain. It probably goes in the higher level of good, to be honest. Honestly, it probably goes a little bit before the On Guard case, because I think the On Guard case was an alright climax, final case of a game, and then 3-2 and then 1-2. All right, and then so 3-3. This one was interesting. This one didn't really push any real buttons for me. So it was a nice little breather from, you know, some of the, I mean, not really, because the last case before this one was kind of goofy too, but it was a nice, not breather, but a nice little not feel good case, but goofy case with a tiny little cool backstory of a Yakuza, the daughter of a, daughter or granddaughter of a Yakuza mob boss, and what her past was like. Not gonna like, thinking back, it feels a little bit more shallow than some of the other cases, and I kind of don't like it for that reason, because I feel like, I don't know, it was the perfect length, I'll give it that, but it didn't really feel compelling. Like we got some goofy moments. We got we got Pink Gordon Ramsay in there, and then it was fun voicing the gangster, but it didn't really do much for me. Investigating, there was a moment where I think I got lost for a hot minute. There were a lot of seed jokes we got to make out of that, so that was fun. But yeah, I mean, 3-3 I think probably seats it seats in good, because it's not a bad case. It was perfectly lengthed. I don't think that it was like it didn't drag on longer than it needed to. I got stuck in a couple certain parts, but it wasn't like the word. Honestly, I might put it in okay, because I'm like, I don't even know if I put it in, because I mean, I think I'm about to put it in okay, because it's legit filler. I mean, if you took this case out, it literally does nothing. Now that doesn't make it a bad case, right? We have seen, like with the Steel Samurai case, and some aspects of some of the other cases where some of the stuff feels like filler, and like it kind of is, but it kind of just pads out some stuff and kind of gives you room to breathe. I think this case would have been better after a hard-hitting one. Like if they put 3-4 after 2-2 and then put 3-3 afterwards, this one might have hit better because of the fact that it's filler. But 3-4 to 3-5 is pretty critical, so I don't know. I think if I had to order things, that would have made it feel better, but I don't think that would have been the perfect order. I think the way that it is now works. But yeah, so right now everything is pretty even. Holy cow, I didn't think everything would kind of be so evened out. I thought we'd have way less and bad, but looking back on some of these cases, like some of them were bad. So yeah, 3-4. So 3-4 is the case. It's kind of like the background of what happened with Mia and Dahlia and their backstory and who Godot is. If you guys remember me talking about it, right? 3-1 goes into the backstory of Phoenix and Dahlia, and so I think that the reason why 3-1 had to go in the end of Great is because these, like, it was like the starting point for us to understand what was to come. And so 3-4 had that nice feel-good feeling of like, okay, we're finally getting to know some things. Like, how does Mia know Dahlia? Thing is, it throws a lot of twists at you. So like, Dahlia's name isn't actually Dahlia. It was named somebody else. She actually has a sister. It's not really confirmed. She was that who looked like Dahlia to us, even though it wasn't really confirmed that it was her, was, you know, that she had a sister. She was a policewoman, and she was killed by her sister, which is so crazy. But as Mia, we have to kind of prove that it wasn't Terry who did it, because and again, it kind of plays into the whole thing. Like, so not only just 1-4, but if y'all remember as well, so 1-4 and 2-2, as well as case number 3-1, all have a tie-in effect where there's multiple layers to it, and they all kind of tie into different storylines a bit, but they all have a nice little pinnacle, and this is the start of that. And so the reason why I bring that up is because we're gonna start getting into like the whole how everything comes together and starts like impacting each other, and kind of lays the foundation for why I'm going to rank the rest of them, how I'm going to rate them. 3-4. I mean, I think it has to go right here in the front of Great. The only reason why it's not in best is because it again is like that midpoint. So if 3-5 didn't happen, of course it'd be the best, but 3-4 was like the precursor again to what was to come. So going back to like the whole lineup of things, 3-4 goes here because it just does such a great job of like carrying forward that, or like confirming suspicions while also laying up more mysteries for the player to solve. And there was no investigation, so it was just a trial, and so there's no really huge payoff. You do get hit with a heavy hitting like dang at the end of it when Terry unfortunately passes away, because Dahlia is just, you know what I mean, Dahlia is Dahlia, and she kind of gets off, or she doesn't get away with it, does she? No, because Mia's able to prove it, I thought. No, Mia proves that she was one who killed whatever in the later one, right? Like I said, this is a prequel, so it does kind of get a little confusing when you think about how these cases are ordered, but it all makes sense when you actually think in the grand scheme of things how things lay up into these character interactions. But yeah, she gets off in 3-4. Yeah, she gets off in 3-4 and then gets convicted in 3-1. which then leads to her dying and then coming back as a spirit. Also Terry, yeah, for real. Terry, honestly, oh my gosh. Yeah, that's why it has to go in great too, right? Because there was no payoff, but there was like that was the first time it felt like there was nothing as a prosecutor or as a defense attorney that we could do to save somebody, knowing that they weren't the one who did it, and that he was and kind of thinking, you know, he's being manipulated by Dahlia. And I feel like now we're at the pinnacle, right? We've talked about it before. 3-1 sets up the whole, you know, who is who. 3-4 backstory for who's who. Now 3-5 is where the lid gets absolutely blown off. Right? Multiple shocking revelations here. We not only get to learn that Mia's mom is still, Mia and you know, Maya's mom by extension, still alive. We also know that this is where the plot carried from 2-2 finally kicks into play with I think it was Morgan Faye, I think is Pearl's mom's name. If not, it's just Pearl's mom, putting into play some of her backhandedness and trying to take over as you know, being the mother of the master, trying to make Pearl's the master of the Crane channeling technique. Now this case is crazy because of so many different things. One, Iris aka Dahlia is back, right? Iris is actually her own person, but you don't know that. You just see her and you think it's Dahlia. It turns out Dahlia has a twin, but Dahlia still does make a return in this one, which helps us tie up some loose ends with the whole Faye storyline and how Phoenix and her were a thing in the past, everything like that. So let's start with why this is one of my, so first of all, let me rank it. Now, y'all are waiting on it. Y'all are like, please do not yap for another 3 or 4 minutes before you rank it. So I think this one has to go in best, top of the best. I talked about it on stream and I was like, it might have to go behind these two. You have to understand something. I'm not a writer by any means, but I have consumed so much media across so many different mediums: anime, video games, live action TV shows, books, movies, you name it. I have indulged in the art of storytelling, and I personally wanted to write stories for the longest time. And I feel like let me explain myself. Let me go back before I go too far into the ultimate reason why I put this in the top. So first of all, it goes in best in general, regardless of placement, because what it sets out to do. It ties up storylines. It introduces characters that had not motivations, but had gone missing, like Mia's mom, Iris / Dahlia. Not only that, but it has another high stakes moment where the bridge is burned down to get to Maya, so Maya's trapped on an island, potentially with a killer we don't know. There's a whole mystery behind where is she, what's going on, how in the world is this person trying to get away with this? And they have played off of the idea of how channeling can be used. I was hoping for this from case 2. I was like, we need a case where we have not just somebody using the channeling technique to commit a murder, but to like basically create multiple instances of like plot twisting shenanigans to the point where your head is constantly spinning on the concepts. So 3-5 does a lot of that. It is insane what they managed to accomplish with that. So for that reason, it goes top of the best. I think even though it is long and there's lots to be continues, it's for a reason. And like I said, it has to tie up a lot of information. It cannot just be like a 3 or 4, part case. It has to have all of those things tied up nice, pretty in a bow. So that's why I put it in best, right? Now, my ultimate reason for why it is like the best out of everything that we see. So you have to understand, when you're a writer and you're creating multiple sequels, right? You have your first story, right? You're starting to get into the stride of understanding who your characters are, what their motivations are like, what you want to do. You have your second one. Lots of people say sequels aren't as great as the first, and in this case, that's very true. Justice for All is not as good as the very first original Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney game. But 3 rectifies a lot of what 2, I think, what wanted to do in terms of creating more cases that felt meaningful while also having a silly vibe to it. So 3-5 has a little bit of funny, bits to it, like with Laurice Dunham, right? Thought that was pretty funny. Identity reveals, which are, plot twists. Not just that, but some really high stakes, serious plot related things that also gets a little bit deeper with backstories like Godot. My main reason why, again, that it goes in first is because as a writer, when you're trying to incorporate so many things, like on paper, this shouldn't work. On paper, you should not be able to pull off some of the stuff. Like, honestly, the way that they carried out the murder and tried to cover it up is almost 2-3 levels of ridiculous, right? Like it's not quite as ridiculous, but swinging a body across a river with a rope, a singular rope from a burnt bridge, Come on now. But it works for me personally because I feel like the characters that carry this stuff out are like dedicated. Like I just feel like Dahlia's motivations for doing this stuff, like you have to understand she's just evil. She Wicked Witch of the West, or not really, because technically Wicked kind of set out to squash that propaganda, but she is like wicked levels of evil. Like she is like devil incarnate. She is willing to carry out some of the craziest murders on someone just because she doesn't like them and that they try to get in her way. So you have to understand that her dedication is real. Not just that, but in order to make some of this stuff work, it kind of had to pull out, like kind of stretch the realm of what's possible versus what's not possible, and kind of play off of that and hope that whoever's ingesting this is not looking too deep into like what do you call it, physics and stuff like that. So not just that, but he also had to write around making sure that the case wasn't a slog fest of exposition. Like the case couldn't just be exposition for all these things without clear setups and in-depth techniques with writing and setting things up properly. We are eased into this with trying to get Maya and Pearl to learn more about the crane channeling technique, and also to get, just in general, their powers, working better or whatever. I don't know what the actual objective was. I think that was the objective, but they went to go train, right? And I think easing into that, and then Phoenix getting to see Dahlia and stuff like that, and then it slowly unravels, and then you start feeling the locks or the keys kind of turning, and you're like, oh, okay, hold on a minute, I'm unlocking knowledge here. Like, hold on a minute, like this happened last, hold on, that's why the Godot did this and whatever. Not just that, but the backstories are A1. I don't even know if I need to go on. I think that if you've played it, you understand it better than I do. Not many people who are writers of multiple sequels can pull off what Takumi did, and I think this is like the pinnacle of everything that these games set out to do. They set out to not just define what it meant to be an attorney, what it meant to get a verdict. It also kind of defined what it meant to have a sense of justice, what it means to rely on your friends. Because Leo, that last case also had you playing as Edgeworth. We cannot forget that this case also had you know what I mean, piecing it up with Edgeworth to hand off the case. Like, I think it was like the perfect pinnacle for what was to come, and nothing felt rushed. Now, there was one part, but this is a personal opinion. With the Ace Attorney games, sometimes you do have to understand that when the game will present the player knowledge that Phoenix, the played character, does not understand. So we played through all the past and understand Godot's backstory, Mia's backstory and everything, but as Phoenix, you don't know. So sometimes you are asked to go through in these cases and confirm knowledge over and over again, which did happen in this one. It did put me out of it for a little bit, but you can't, without Phoenix, you have to understand that these characters have not been exposed to some of the knowledge. Of course, Phoenix knew of the case and knew of Mia, but I think a lot of the pieces need to line up for how he saw, or why Godot saw him the way that he did, and it kind of led to us having to present evidence, knowledge, things like that. And I think that's really what did it. The end was also probably because you were playing for 3 hours. Yeah, I think that definitely was it too. Like, I really wish I could go back and replay it. Like, genuinely, I really wish I could have. Games like this are really hard to play for more than 2 hours. Even at 2 hours, it's crazy. It's really hard to play these games for long periods of time because it's a lot of reading, and you kind of have to go through and do it all over again. And going back, like, seriously, I've gone back and I'm like, bro, I really wish I could have felt it more in that moment. I feel like had I just split it up and just said, you know what, we'll come back to it, I would have been way more hype and energized. But I don't think it takes away anything from the game, and it's not really a game problem. That's really like a me problem, because when you're playing through these games like continuously, and you're going through and you're reading and you're presenting evidence and you're getting stuck, you kind of get in this rut of like, oh my gosh, let it be over. But then when I finally got to that ending point, I think I was finally in a place to like feel it, the fact that we finished the game, the fact that we tied up everything, and that Phoenix's main storyline was over. And so with that being said, yeah, I think that cements it. All right, y'all, this is the tier list. So I think I think number 1 and 3 take up most of the spots in our top tiers, and then game number 2, of course, is taking up our bottom tiers a lot. I feel like this is pretty solid, and I feel like this kind of resonates a lot with the community. I know that 1-3 probably doesn't, or 1-2 is this 1-2 or 1-3? No, 1-3. I feel like 1-3 probably doesn't. 1-2 probably doesn't either. I feel like a lot of people care about that case a lot more because Mia passed away, and then you had Maya kind of as her sister come into play, and it kind of set the tone for what the games were going to be like as, being a duo with Maya. And yeah, a very unfortunate thing about game number 2 is that it has probably my favorite prosecutor in it, and it has to go in the stinker. Like, her and Godot are probably my 2 favorites. Honestly, nah, that's not even true. Edgeworth, Godot, and Franziska are all just on the same tier for me. Honestly, not really. I feel like Edgeworth and Godot are probably a step above Franziska if I had to rank them based on depth. But I feel like Franziska had a cool little storyline in 2 where it was like she had to kind of overcome her obsession with trying to beat me and learn what it meant to kind of do things for yourself more. And that I wish it got played a bit more in 3, but there was so much going on in 3. I don't think they could have written it in and tied it in a bit more. But they did a good job of making it be like, I'm here as me and not my father, nothing more. Like, I think that was cold. As long as 3.5 is at the top, everything is chilling. Yeah. I feel like 3.5, there's no way 3.5 couldn't be at the top. Like 3.5 is just, it did so, and that was why, honestly, I was like 3.5 had the potential to go top of great, bottom of best. But then I had to think to myself, I am going back and thinking, and this is what I meant when I said at the beginning, going off of how we should talk about things like, okay, what about what they set out to do and wasn't accomplished? They set out to tie out a lot of stuff, and you have to think about how much of an undertaking that is. That is a lot to do, having like 3 different storylines playing across 3 different games, you know what I mean? And to also not make it feel like an absolute slog, like that is insane. Like, to me, that is insane. I think that is a feat most writers cannot pull off. No matter how seasoned they are, sometimes you fall into the rut of doing too much, of trying to focus in on one problem rather than addressing everything evenly and making it feel comfortable for the player. All right, so this is the tier list. I hope y'all did enjoy that. If you did, make sure you hit that like and the subscribe video. Hit that like and the subscribe on the video. If you did, also hit that alert bell notification as well, so you always get notified of when I am posting a new video. Also, when I go live, we go live playing Ace Attorney content. So if you're interested in that, feel free. If not, no worries. Also, in the description below, there is a link to our Discord if you want to join that, so you get notified through there as well. No matter what device you're using, if it has Discord on it, you will get notified. So if you think that's a good idea, think that's for you, go ahead and do it. If not, no worries. If you want to discuss things here on the comment section, make sure you leave a comment in the comment section below. Let me know how you would rank the games, how you feel about all of them, and how you would rank them differently if you don't fully agree. But yeah, I appreciate y'all as always. I will see you guys in the very next video. Peace, y'all.